welcome back to the quarterfinals of the nationwide e-debate. And we have here Team Anambra and Team Ekiti. And before we proceed in this debate, one thing I've learned about debate so far is about resilience and capability to adapt to the situation. And I will really say that these intellectuals have shown so much energy in this debate. Moving forward, I would like to welcome our moderator for this event, for this debate. She remains Emeka Deborah. Please, a round of applause
for her. For the third round of the quarterfinals, the motion colonialism had a lasting negative impact in developing countries would be argued by Ekiti and Anambra states. On my left-hand side is Anambra team proposition, with the lead speaker being Ogobu Choma, the chief supporting speaker being Ejikeme Jeffrey, and the second supporting speaker being Eze John Paul. And on my right-hand side, we have Ekiti State being opposition, with the lead speaker being Ojo Goodness, the chief supporting speaker being Oderinu Peace, and the second supporting speaker being Kolade Ibidayo. Permit me to call on the chief supporting speaker of side proposition to open the case of the argument.
The house. Imagine a master-servant relationship. Now, we are not talking 7, we are not talking 8, we are not talking 9 years. We are looking at hundreds of years and 200 of years ago. Now, the house, and 200 of years ago. Now, the house, 200 of years ago. Now, even if you are free, even if you are free, as far as, or because you have already tampered with your culture, with your ethnic groups, and with your resources, you will never, ever remain the same again. And this is what we are against in today's debate. This is what colonialism has done to developing countries. House, good evening, panel of adjudicators, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Obogu Chamajiska, and I'm the lead speaker from Side Proposition. The motion before us states that colonialism has had lasting impact or negative lasting impact on developing countries. The key definitions. Colonialism is a process whereby countries take over other countries with the use, or often with the use of persuasion or force, often because of economic gain. Lasting negative impacts are long-term, persistent, and often irresistible consequences of colonialism on developing countries. While developing countries are countries that are characterized by low poverty rate, high or low economic development, and low human development. House, before I continue, I would like to clarify our stance in today's debate. We are not saying that we oppose colonialism. We are not saying that colonialism as a whole is bad. Yes, we agree to the fact that colonialism has positive advantages like Western education. What you are saying is that despite its positive impact and despite its positive benefits, it still has lasting negative impact. But the House, as the lead speaker, I'll take the argument on impact on Western education, economic impact, and social impact. My first party speaker will take the argument on political impact and psychological impact, whilst my second party speaker will rebut to affirm why our team wins today's debate. Now, my first line of argument is on impact on Western education. Under this, I have 2 levels of analysis. Number 1, we know the side of proposition is going to come up in today's debate and tell us that, yes, colonialism introduced Western education. House, we concede to that fact. But then, let's look at the bigger picture. Before colonialism introduced Western education in these developing countries, it already existed. Where? In developed countries. What this means is that economic education was called to solve problems that are in developing countries and not problems that are in developing countries today. Now, the House, we concede, now, the House, during colonial era, colonial masters taught local people Western education, not because they wanted them to improve on their developing country, but because they wanted them to increase productivity in developed countries. Now, this led to brain drain, where millions of skilled and able people were taken to developed countries just to improve productivity over there. So the house, economics is part of Western education, and economic principles that are implemented or that are learned in developing countries today are not even principles that are implemented in these countries. They are developed principles, or they are developed countries principles. So the house, a vivid example of this is of how international organizations like IMF, which is International Monetary Fund, has or advised Nigeria to take on economic principles like floating the Nigerian naira and reducing fuel subsidy. Nigeria took this advice. How has Nigeria been? Nigeria is a country that is now characterized by poverty, by high inflation. Nigeria is now wallowing in poverty, and now Nigeria is struggling to even replace or to change the curriculum of Western education, because now they know that Western education does not solve problems that are in their country. Today, the house, my second level of analysis is on mother tongue. We see that countries that are using their own mother tongue to teach are developed and advanced countries. These countries are like USA and UK. They use their own mother tongue to teach, which is English language, and they are now developed and advanced countries. Even Japan and South Korea, which are one of the advanced countries in technology, uses their own language to teach in schools, in hospitals, and in other places or other sectors in the economy. This shows that if you use your own mother tongue to teach, it will actually promote better understanding, efficiency, and effectiveness. So the house, Nigerian countries or developing countries like Nigeria that uses impacted or imposed Western culture or Western languages like English, people will try to adapt to it. Yes, people will try to measure to it. Less like we're doing in today's debate. But the most people will still find it difficult to adapt to it, because they'll still find it difficult to learn foreign language. Now, my second line of argument is on economic impact. Under this, I have three levels of analysis. Number one, economic exploitation. House. The main reason why colonial masters came into Nigeria or came into developing countries was not because they wanted to do us good. They did not want to build roads for us. They came here because they wanted to exploit us. In fact, the main reason why they came here was because they found out that the resources are in Nigeria or in Africa, and these resources are left untapped. That is why they came here, to exploit us and to leave developing countries impoverished and always develop their own country. Now, that's a vivid example of this is of the Enugu-Port Harcourt railway station that was built. This is for colonial masters did not build this railway station because they wanted to provide roads for Nigerians or provide roads for developing countries. They did it because they wanted to exploit coal from Enugu to Port Harcourt and send it to their country. This is the reason why they came here. They did not come here to help us. They came here to exploit us and to make use of us. A report according to Al Jazeera in 2019, 19 December, shows that countries or UK, which is the colonial or which is the colonial master of India, stole $45 trillion. How? $45 trillion from this country. Now let's put this into perspective. US is the largest economy in the world today, and US economy is worth $28 trillion. And UK stole a whopping $45 trillion from India. Now if we steal this kind of money from this country, what are they remaining with? What is left in this country? And that is why you see situations or research shows that India is one of the poorest countries in the world. In fact, India is the poverty capital of the world. Why? Because of colonialism. Why? Because of their colonial masters. The opposition will come and tell us that colonialism has brought about education and infrastructure. But if your economy is in shambles, what is the use of this education? If your economy is in shambles, what is the use of infrastructure? Because if your economy is in shambles, infrastructure and education will not work. Opposition will have to answer that question in today's debate. Now, my second level of analysis is on economic dependency. How? Economic dependence. Developed countries often, or developing countries often develop or depend on their colonial masters. Now, African countries that were colonized by French countries like Togo, Benin Republic, Chad, and whatsoever depend solely on their colonial masters. Even today, they are using the currency that was imposed on them by France, which is safer. What this means is that France controls their monetary and fiscal policy and controls what happens to the economy. What this means is that if France wants these countries to go in shambles and fail, these countries will fail because they don't even control their own currency. They don't even have control of their own economy. My third level of analysis is on debt trap strategy. How countries or developed countries that came into developing countries stole their resources and made them poor. What this means is that if these developing countries need money, they will definitely ask their colonial masters for it. Yes, they will give them, but they will put on or will put demand or outrageous demand and high interest rates on it. Now the house. That's why we see situations or examples such as Hayesha, which Hayesha that asked its developed or its colonial masters France for money, and now they are in debt of 165 million because of the debt that they borrowed from their colonial masters France. How would the economy grow if this is happening? Can I take a few eyes?
The other time you made mention of Japan, that they are using that they are using their own language in their own country because they were not using Pini. But let's make use of Nigeria.
You have 15 seconds to ask for your time has elapsed.
Yes,
My second line of argument is on social impact. House, under this, I'm going to look at slave trade. Slave trade led to dependency, it led to underemployment, and employment is something that is important for economic prosperity. House, apart from that, slave trade is very inhumane. Now, it killed people that were in developing countries are people that were used for slave trade. The House opposition does not care about this in today's debate, but in me, it affected my own mental health. The House slave trade, because I see documentaries, I see pictures, and I see videos of how they exploited our forefathers and our grandfathers and my great-grandfathers, and this has affected my mental health even today, because I see them chained neck to neck and hand to hand. As I'm standing here today, I'm still visualizing this picture. The House, this is what opposition will have to prove in today's debate. Opposition has a burden to prove how all these are not negative impacts of colonialism and how we are wrong in today's debate. With this, let's see proposition stand.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, the lead speaker, for side proposition. Caution, please do not go close to the microphone. Allow me to invite the lead speaker for side opposition to open the case of the argument.
Good evening, the impartial panel of judges. The team opposition made a statement the other time saying that the colonialism because Japan are using their own languages in teaching in schools, that the country is developed. But let's make use of Japan. They have only just one languages. But in Nigeria, where we have multilingual languages, do we expect us in Nigeria to use one topic to teach in Nigeria? This is not right. Okay, she also make use of Western education. Okay, if not for this Western education, would I be here today? If not for this Western education, would I have the initiative of preparing this debate today? If not for this Western education, would I have a type of language, English language, to communicate today? Good evening, panel of judges, the member of the House, my friends in arguments, co-debaters, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ojo Gunes Yanoluwa, a dignified representative of Ekiti State, here to represent us today in this nationwide electronic debate competition. Standing here today, I feel highly privileged to radiate forth my view in the opposition of the motion that says colonialism has had a lasting negative impact in developing countries. According to Lord Frederick Lugard, he says the British colonial administrators has brought order, stability, and civilization to Nigeria. Maintaining a clear stance in my opposition, I would like to define the meaning of colonialism. According to the third edition of Oxford English Dictionary, it says colonialism is the process or practices of acquiring and maintaining colonies, especially to extend power and influences of these colonizing countries. The lasting positive impact of colonizing in Nigeria should not be underestimated. You said the other time that colonialism brought economic shambles, got petroleum and other things, that it came to exploit our country. This thing was not lasting impact. This thing was not lasting positive impact, but lasting negative impact when they were going back to their country. Did they take the petroleum? Did they take the petroleum, the crude oil when they were going? Although they really exploit us, I agreed with that. But this did not make a lasting negative impact because we are still enjoying that petroleum today. When they were going, did they take it with them? Or did they take the gold that we have in Nigeria with them? No! All the education, all the building that they built in Nigeria, were they taken to the American countries with, all the British countries with them? No. I am the chief speaker. We talk about how colonialism has had a positive lasting impact in the area of eradicating harmful traditional practices, and how it has had a negative impact in the health sector, and also in the unification of the nations and ethnic groups. Then my first supporting speaker, we talk about how it has had a lasting positive impact in the area of infrastructure development, Western education, and modern governance. Then my the last speaker, which is the second supporting speaker, we also talk about how it has have a lasting positive impact in economic growth, global trade, and cultural exchange. Although colonialism has past is complex and multifaceted, we must not dismiss its contribution to development and infrastructural development in Nigeria and other developing countries like Ghana, Kenya, South Sudan, and Liberia, and other countries like that in Africa. The positive impact of colonialism in Nigeria have a wide achievement range that cannot be underestimated. Then delving into the argument I have to back up my opposition here today. Firstly, the eradication of Afro traditional practices. In Nigeria before, we have all these Afro traditional practices that are not supposed. I will attend to that later. Thank you. That are not supposed to be used. Using of human sacrifices, ritual killing, female genital mutilations, killing of twins, and the killing of slaves to follow the traditional ruler where they died. The killing of twins were deeply rooted in Nigeria. Once, when the twins were born, they were the fathers caused, and they were killed immediately. Thanks to one of these colonial people, a white woman named Mary Slessor rose up in 1889 and fought for these twins. She was the one that made it to be abolished in Nigeria in 1901. If not, many countless of twins would have died. And we are saying that colonialism did not have a lasting positive impact in Nigeria or other developing countries. What about the killing of slaves to follow the traditional rulers? This was not only practice in Nigeria. They believed that once a traditional ruler died, the slaves must be killed. I will attest to that later. The slaves must be killed so that they could lead them to the ancestors' land. Which ancestor are we talking about? Which ancestor land? These colonial masters are the ones that impact us and let us know that this is a tradition that are supposed to be practiced. We say that they respect our culture. These colonial masters so much love our cultures that every year when we are practicing the Osho Oshogbo, they usually come here to celebrate with us. The culture they do not like is the harmful traditional practices, but they love our culture. They even build museum to protect our cultural artifacts. According to World Health Organization, there was 50% decrease in female genital mutilation with the percent of 1920 to 1960. This is a wide reduction in the percent of genital mutilation. Then moving into my second point, it has a positive impact in the health sector. The positive impact of colonialism in the health sector should not be underestimated. Building of hospital like Yaba Hospital in 1914 in Lagos. Building of University College Hospital in Ibadan in 1932. Building of Bradiko Hospital in Kaduna in 1922 when they were going. Did they take this hospital with them? Are we not enjoying it today? What about providing cure and medicine, vaccines for sickness like smallpox, malaria, and other incurable diseases in Nigeria? Before in Nigeria, malaria was so bad that it can even make people die. Mary Slessor died because of malaria, and Alexander the Great, a man that almost conquered the whole world, died because of malaria. But these same colonial masters brought medicine to Nigeria and made sure that these workers were cured. We say that they only prioritize their own things. But we know that these were the things that we are still using. Back to your point of information.
How do you justify the human rights abuses committed during colonialism with the argument that colonialism is beneficial? Please address the general house.
The human rights that was being abused. Which human right are we talking about? Which human rights was being abused? Yes, some people suffered during this colonialism, but they laid the foundation for the future generation that we are now benefiting today. You also make use of a slave trade the other time. Slave trade is different from slavery. We are the one that is slaving ourselves. This will make me to mention a woman, Efuroye Tinubu, a woman who slaved the Nigerians, and she's also a Nigerian. She is the one that is selling these people to the colonial masters just for what? For reflecting glass. And I'm saying that colonialism has had a negative positive impact, a negative lasting impact in Nigeria. It has not, but has a lasting positive impact. With this fighter, crucial, vital point of mine, that are facts and evidence, that are verified verifications, I believe that I've been able to convince the impartial panel of judges, friends in argument, and everyone seated here today that colonialism has it has not had a lasting negative impact in developing countries, but rather it has had a lasting positive impact in developing countries. Thank you.
Impressive. Bravo to you, the lead speaker for side opposition. I'll be delighted to call on the chief supporting speaker for side proposition to commence the argument in accordance with the established guidelines.
The House. Colonialism is not just an economic or a political system, but also a system that has led to the eradication of our cultures, our traditions, our identity, and even our governance, especially in colonized nations that are now today the developing countries of the world, which is what opposition does not want us to see in today's debate. With this, I begin. Good evening, the panel of adjudicators, and of course, the members of the House. I'm Ejike Jeffrey, the first supporting speaker of Team Proposition. Panel, during the course of argument of team opposition, they actually tried to rebut our argument on Western education. But through our lead speaker, we have been able to give you key pointers on how developed nations of the world actually are more progressive because of what they use their language to teach. And we actually give comparative analysis with developing countries that are not progressive because we have foreign language imposed in us. Take for example, Japan has multi-language, which our opponents obviously denies in today's debate. They're not developing countries, they're developed countries. But you tend to see that actually they are developed because they're using their language to teach. And we also made mention through our lead speaker that these Western countries gives us ideas like flood the naira and remove fuel subsidies. But how has this helped our economies to grow? Obviously not, because they prioritize exploitation and self-interest over local development. Our opposition also made mention about the issue of eradication of harmful practices. General House. The main thing here is that the issue here is that African cultures have harmful practices, quite all right. But what of the harmful practices that are also seen in Western cultures? The House. Then they say that there was a time in England where women are being killed if they are perceived to be intelligent. Is this not a harmful practice? But today it has been stopped. Therefore, that argument on eradication of culture still needs justification from side opposition. Panel, over to their argument on how colonial masters love our culture. But if they love our culture, why is that they exploited our people? Our ancestors are exploited, our individuals are forced to labor, and are even denied their rights. Panel, we even asked side opposition a point of information to which they tried to scratch, but obviously they didn't smartly do that, because we see that human rights are fundamental. For example, right to life. But during the time of colonial era, individuals were exploited, their rights to expression, their rights to life were being removed from, and were being denied of them because they obviously didn't even have a say. This was what breeded inequality amongst nations of the world today. Panel, over to my argument on psychological impact. Panel, under this, I shall be giving you two levels of analysis. What my first level of analysis? I'll be showing how colonialism has led to inferiority complex. But I'll begin by painting a picture of a master-slave relationship. Let's take, for example, I'm a slave and my opponents are my masters. Panel, what does this mean? If I serve in decades or even for centuries, then to see that at a point, if I get liberty, I'll obviously see them as being more superior than me, maybe because of what they have and what I don't have. Panel, what does this lead to? This leads to mental dependence, where I can't even source myself, I see myself as being less competent. This is what applies to colonial powers or colonialists and their colonized nations. The House. In present day, we see individuals feeling inferior to Western cultures that colonize them. Panel, this has led to feelings of lack of self-competence, feeling of inferiority, feeling of hopelessness, and feeling of powerlessness. Panel, is that just justifiable with the beneficials of colonialism? Obviously not, because this has hindered progress in many African societies and even beyond. Panel, what my second analysis on traumatization. Panel, during the colonial era, we see individuals being exploited, being forced to labor. What has this led to? This led to a sense of inferiority, a sense of hopelessness, a sense of powerlessness and anxiety, sense of fear. Panel, in a society or in a developing country where individuals has this feeling of less confidence, how do you expect them to push their country forward? It is not possible. May I have it?
The focus of today's debate is colonialism had a lasting negative impact on developing countries. Lasting negative impact. All inferiority complex, they are not lasting
Thank you.
impact.
The House. What I was trying to point out in today's debate is how this inferiority complex has made people to not push their countries forward, especially in developed nations. In developed nations today, individuals are not progressive-minded. Why? Because they are feeling inferior to their colonial masters. They are feeling inferior to the Western cultures that even colonized us. This is inferiority we're talking about, which hinders them from building a progressive society. With this, that point falls in today's debate. What my second argument on political impact? General House, I'll give you 3 levels of analysis. On my first level of analysis panel, it seems that my opponents doesn't even know about the arbitrary border issues that has led to conflict in many countries of the world. Nigeria and Cameroon once had a border issue. Ethiopia and Somalia has a border issue today. Even India and Pakistan still have conflict as a result of border issues. Now, these European colonists that came to Africa as a society actually saw a continent that is untapped and decided to cut us up like cakes and map out territories regardless of ethnic and clan divisions. What did this lead to? This led to ethnic rivalry. This led to division. This led to inequality, corruption, and many other factors. Panel, this hinders a progressive society. This is what the opposition is trying to avoid in today's debate. They are trying to deny the fact that there are negative impacts of colonialism which still plays out in our society today. Team opposition still needs to give their clarifications. Panel, take for example, the Rwanda genocide of 1994. It led to the killing of 800,000 individuals. Why? Because of ethnic rivalry, the fight for cultural and political dominance in Rwanda as a multi-diverse ethnic groups. Panel, our opponents are obviously from the Yoruba state of Ekiti, but you didn't know that they have their brothers and sisters there in Togo, there in Benin Republic, but because of divisions, this has led to their displacement. This is the lasting impact of neocolonialism because it has led to identity crisis and loss of identity. What my second argument on what my second analysis on neocolonialism under political impact? General House, neocolonialism is a situation or a scenario whereby individuals or developing countries are directly or indirectly influenced by powerful countries. For example, we already know that developing nations do not have colonial masters with them already, but we still see the corporations operating in our countries, exploiting our resources without even giving profits or allocating profits to develop these local communities. For example, it was reported by Al Jazeera report in 2023 that 90% of Congo's resources is being exploited and the society is being ravaged by poverty, inequality, corruption, and economic fluctuation and crisis, but they have enough resources to sustain themselves. Over to my last argument on weak institution, panel of adjudicators. Tend to see that these colonial masters actually brought to us a form of governance that does not even suit our local needs because they prioritize foreign interest. The House tend to see that they even lack accountability in the colonial era, which breeded feelings of inequality amongst people. It breeded political instability. It breeded corruption and an ineffective justice system. Panel, this is what colonialism has brought to us, a lasting negative impact, of which opposition has to consider in today's debate if we seriously want to combat this issue and push our developing countries forward to become developed. Because have you ever sat down and thought of why is it that most developing countries are colonies that were actually colonized by Europeans? But these Europeans are developed countries, but they're not helping us to even develop. Panel, are they not taking advantage of us? This is a question for opposition to tackle in today's debate. In conclusion, the House, what have we brought into this argument? We brought you a word where psychological impact and political impact is a reason why we should study in today's debate. At this juncture, I'm very proud to propose. Thank you.
That was amazing. More power to your elbow, the chief supporting speaker of side proposition. I'll be so glad calling on the chief supporting speaker of side opposition to further the case of the argument.
Obafemi Awolowo wisely said, and I quote, "Colonialism was a bitter pill to swallow, but it has undeniably brought lasting positive impact and advantages to developing countries." Good evening, impartial panel of judges, accurate timekeeper, My friends in argument, distinguished and beautiful ladies and gentlemen, standing before you today with boldness and confidence is none other than Oderinu Pisbolo Atife, a proud representative of Ekiti State, representing her in this year 2024 nationwide electronic debate. And this house strongly opposes the motion which states that colonialism has had a lasting negative impact on developing countries. The team opposition, they made mention of economic exploitation. I slightly agree. But we also need to know that while exploitation occurred, they also provided job opportunities and infrastructural development. They also boosted economic growth. As the African proverb goes, do not look where you fell, but where you slipped. While colonialism's challenges are well documented, it is also necessary and essential to bring the various advantages and merits into limelight. As Nelson Mandela wisely said, and I quote, "The greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall." The challenges of colonialism has developed African nations, especially Africa, with over 20% of global economic growth attributed to Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to redefine. It is time to reevaluate the impact and lasting contributions of colonialism. And this will lead me to strongly back up this argument with the following points. Colonialism's lasting positive impact on the education sector. The legacies of colonialism may seem slightly complex, but its benefits are undeniably evident in the education sector. As the African proverb says, knowledge is power. And colonialism has introduced Western-style education, transforming African traditional landscape. You mentioned Western education, but I have this for you. We need to know that colonial masters, they were the one that established the first and oldest secondary school in Lagos, Bariga, in the year 1861. This was CMS, June 6, 1861, which is subject to verification. They introduced this school, which has helped to empower millions to acquire skills and to be educated. What of the establishment of universities? I will attend to that later. Institutions like the former University College of Ibadan, now known as University of Ibadan, was introduced by colonial masters in the year 1948. What of the University of Ghana, which was also established by colonial masters in also the year 1948. The University of Lagos in the year 1962. University College of Nairobi in the year 1953. And also Makerere University, which was also established by colonial administrators in the year 1922. And these have become bastions of learning, where scholars and learners acquire new skills. This has also facilitated easy access to learning, and also increased literacy rate from 10% in the 1900 to 60% in 1960. A report by UNESCO in the year 1960, which is subject to verification. We also need to take note that colonialism improved access. I'll attend to that later. We also need to notice that colonialism increased access to women education. Women like Olufemilayo Ransom Kuti and Ajia Gamba Sawobo were able to become pioneering figures in Nigeria today due to the introduction of Western education. We also have some notable male individuals and leaders in Nigeria who were trained under British colonial education. You made mention that they introduced Western education because they want to increase productivity. But I need you to listen to this properly. Nnamdi Azikiwe, the first president of Nigeria, was trained under British colonial education. Did they improve their own productivity or Nigeria's productivity? We also have Obafemi Awolowo, the first premier of West Nigeria. He was also educated under British colonial education. We also have Tafawa Balewa.
Point of information.
And we attend to that later. Tafawa Balewa, the first prime minister of Nigeria. He was trained under British colonial education. We also have Jomo Kenyatta, the first president of Kenya. He was trained under British colonial administration. What would have become the likes of Tafawa Balewa and Nnamdi Azikiwe if not for the introduction of Western education? They would have been subjected to informal education. Wole Soyinka wisely said, and I quote, "Africa is bright, but only through education. And colonialism has made this possible. If not for Western education, we wouldn't be here. We would have been subjected to informal education, and the opportunity to debate today would not have been made possible. Moving on to your POI.
Don't you think that developing countries should have individual autonomy, free from neo-colonial influence? Please address the House.
The main focus of today's debate is colonialism has had a lasting negative impact on developing countries. That has answered your question. Moving on to my next point, infrastructural development. The legacies that these colonial masters has built, such as railways, good roads, bridges, cannot be underestimated. As the African proverb says, a smooth road does not make a good driver, but a good driver makes the most out of a smooth road. The colonial administrators, they saw to the construction of the first Nigerian railway in the year 1898 to 1902. This railway corporation, it helped to facilitate transportation and improve trade and commerce. These same colonial administrators that you said are not good, they are bad, they are this, they are that, they were the one that introduced telephone and telegraph lines in the 1910s, which helped to facilitate communication. These same colonial administrators, they also helped to introduce water and sanitation system, which has helped to reduce waterborne disease drastically by 75%, a report by UNICEF, which is subject to verification. These same colonial administrators, they introduced electricity, the Nigerian Electricity Supply Company, which was created in the year 1921. As the Ethiopian proverb says, light is a symbol of knowledge. And colonialism has made this possible with hydroelectric energy companies like Kanjidam, which has helped to increase economic growth by 500% between the 1950 to 1960. Panel of judges. Colonialism in Nigeria has made developing countries modernized. As I leave this podium today, I leave you with the word of A.G. Ekiti, which says, colonialism was not just a system of exploitation. It was a medium for modernization. Impartial panel of judges, accurate timekeeper, friends in argument, distinguished and beautiful ladies and gentlemen. With this pivotal point of mine, I am bold that I have been able to convince you beyond reasonable doubt that colonialism has had a lasting positive impact in developing countries rather than negative impact. Thank you.
Thank you very seriously, the Chief Supporting Speaker of Side Opposition. I will proceed by calling the second supporting speaker of Side Proposition to conclude the argument.
Let's begin with running a summary, highlighting the most egregious aspects of colonialism, of which side opposition attempted to blackpaint in today's debates. Violence, exploitation, gradual cultural extinction, ethnic disintegration and rivalry, internal strife, and amongst all, mental slavery. This is the world and country we live in today. Why colonization? Then again, General House, good morning, good evening, dear panel of educators and honorable members of the House. Standing before you is the Master S. Jean Paul, the second supporting speaker from Side Proposition. Mr. Chair, we began this debate by making something quite clear, and that this debate is strictly about developing countries. What does this mean? When Side Opposition come up here and begin to talk about developed countries, they begin to lose. Yes, Nnamdi Azikiwe studied in developed countries and then came back to lay the impact on developing countries. Hence, he studied in developed countries and came back to developing countries. This debate is about developing countries. Take that quite clear in today's debate, Side Opposition. Then again, General House, it is quite laughable that even after our lead speaker and first supporting speaker have preempted and tried the arguments of Western education, they still came up with that argument. But not to worry, Mr. Chair, we are going to pick them at their best.
Yes, we considered Western education is a good impact of colonization, but that is a small picture. Mr. Chair and panel, let's take a look at the better picture and at the bigger picture. And what is this bigger picture? The lasting negative impacts of this Western education. Today, we are shadowing under the British curriculum. Is this right? You know what, I'll give a better clarity by comparing Japan and Nigeria. Japan, even after the Second World War, still surmounts as one of the most industrialized nations in the world, and then among the Asian tigers. Why is this so, Mr. Chair? This is because they are rooted with their culture, they are rooted with their beliefs, and then they study with their language. But Nigeria that was colonized, and then is a colony of Britain, was once the giants of Africa, but now we've gone down to the fourth position and we're still not going down day by day. Why is this so? Negative colonial impact crashing on our country. Then again, General House, developing countries, it should be characterized by two major things: urban and rural communities, in the sense that they are still trying to get up to their feet. This Western education that side operation proposed, at the end of the day, is only limited to urban elites and not the rural communities, leaving these rural communities uneducated. And do you know the worst case scenario, General House? This Western education that is only limited to urban elites, at the end of the day, is focused on producing administrators and clerks to serve colonial governments. Let's talk about the fact, General House, that in Congo in 1959, the Belgian government, the Belgian colonizers invested in mining infrastructure. But at the end of the day, 90% of the population remained in poverty. What does this prove? That they only came to starve us of our resources. Then again, General House, they still came up with the arguments of infrastructure and developments. On the first premise, Mr. Chair, let's look at the bitter part of it. This infrastructure you come out to see banks, you come up to see buildings, came at the expense of our forefathers, came at the expense, and then our forefathers were displaced and exploited at the expense of this infrastructure. We already told you they were put in chains, tied to our necks, kept in places for more than 9 and 10 months. What does this prove? Then again, General House, this infrastructure was primarily built to serve the colonial interests. Talk about extraction industries. Oh yeah, at least we can give you an example of the railway line built from Enugu to Port Harcourt. This railway line was built primarily, Mr. Chair, to ship coal from Enugu to Port Harcourt, then back to their countries, where they built industries with this coal, and then to sell it back to these developing countries at a higher rate, of which they know they cannot afford. At the end of the day, they owe them debts, so that they can directly and indirectly control both the physical and then monetary policy of the economy of these developing countries. This is the hike of it all, Mr. Chair. But let's not break down. It is just getting interesting. They will still come up with the argument of modern governance. But I'd like to stress that before the second party speaker is likely to come up with that argument. General House, colonial administration, as we know, was characterized as corrupt, oppressive, repressive, and forceful. Today, what are we getting? We complain about bad governance in Nigeria. Niger just had a coup d'etat last year. Why? They were complaining that their government was still manipulated by the French. Today, we complain about bad governance. We complain that our president is not good. We complain that our president of the past is not good. Why is this so? Previous colonial administration. This has left a permanent scratch on our government and on our country. That opposition, of course, cannot attempt to report that in today's debate. Then again, General House, they come up with the argument of civilization and stability. Yes, we concord already. I'll take in a minute. We concord already. Civilization is good. Stability is good. But let's look at the main question that begs in today's debate. And what is this question, Mr. Chair? This civilization, was it actually for our own benefits or for the benefits of these individuals, for the benefits of this colonization? Mr. Chair, they control our economy, they control our government, and they control our infrastructure. What does this mean? They equally control our government. Hence, any civilization was actually produced for their own benefits.
Speaker. Okay, you said that colonialism has led to bad governance in Nigeria. Please, can you give us statistical report that shows us that colonial masters had made bad governance or had perpetuated bad governance in today's country?
Sorry. Like I said before, this colonial administration was characterized as forceful, oppressive, repressive, and amongst all corrupt. Today, you complain about bad governance. I don't want to call names, but you complain that presidents are bad, that we're facing high inflation, hyperinflation, breakdown of societal morals. Why is this so? This is because these colonial masters that colonized us, the Britons that colonized us, their administration was bad. This left the bad governance, the bad impacts of a bad governance on our country. We have a bad governance. Why? Because our colonizers had a bad administration. Get that quite clear in today's debate. Very thank you. Then again, Mr. Chair, they came up with the argument of bad rituals. They told us that this colonization took away Africa's bad rituals, but they failed to realize that these Western countries that equally colonized us also had bad rituals. Mr. Chair, they killed witches. If you're a woman and you're intelligent, they will tag you a witch and kill you. And then, Mr. Chair, they also failed to forget that these bad rituals in Africa gradually will eradicate with time. Side operation get that what today's debate. Then again, they still came up with the argument quite laughably that this colonization helped to build museums in the West and then in these Western countries. Museums, they came to our country, told us that our artifacts were demonic, our artifacts were evil, stole our artifacts, and then display it today in their museums, where we pay them millions of dollars to go and watch, where we pay them millions of dollars to go and look at our artifacts in their Western countries. Isn't this the height of it all? Then again, they still came up with the argument of health, how colonization brought about health innovations and health improvements. Are you trying to say that before this colonization there were no cures, people were not being cured, and then with this colonization, aren't people still dying even after taking these cures? Can you answer that? Aren't people still colonizing? Aren't people still dying even after taking these cures that has been brought with this colonization? Then again, Mr. Chair, in conclusion, what were we as a team able to bring to you in today's debate? We gave you 4 major impacts of which we used to debate this motion. So psychological impacts, social impacts, political impact, and economic impact. Mr. Chair, we told you, Mr. Chair, in political impacts that countries that were once brothers and sisters are now disintegrated, now face civil intercontinental wars, now face ethnic disintegration and rivalry. Why? This is an impact of colonization. Then again, in psychological impacts, we gave you the argument of mental health, of mental slavery, where our listener even told you, General House, where Alice even told you that she herself is a victim of this mental slavery. Racism everywhere. This colonization is the breeded racism. At the end, with this, I would like to leave this word with side opposition and with you, General House. In South Africa, they face inferiority. The blacks there face inferiority. What is this all? What did this breed from? Colonization. Vote for side preparation. Thank you.
That was awesome. Bravo to you, the second supporting speaker of side proposition. It is my pleasure to call on the second supporting speaker of side opposition to conclude the argument.
The team proposition came here and told us that South Africa did not have a good governance, or that South Africa has not gained independence, or South Africa independence is not yet free. But I'll tell you a statistical report that shows us that South Africa gained independence in 1994, and they are now having one of the best GDP in the whole world, in Africa. And this has shown us that infrastructural development of colonial masters in South Africa has led to the great development of South Africa even up to date. South Africa has one of the best GDP and infrastructure development in Africa, and they are a source of envy while other countries are envying South Africa due to their infrastructural development. This shows us that colonial masters does not actually affect South Africa. My opponents came here and they said that due to colonial's bad governance, this is affecting today's governors. The presidents are acting due to the governance that they received from colonial masters. But I do not believe, because I believe that we can take control of our own world. So colonial's bad governance does not mean our country should still continue in having bad governance. We can take control of our own world, and that is why bad governance in Nigeria should not be traced to colonial administration. We can take control of our own world and end bad governance in Nigeria. My opponents also came here and they said that colonialism led to slavery, but this is very wrong due to the fact that it was Nigerians, especially the Oyos, that perpetrated slavery. In fact, gathering slaves, but colonial actually perpetrated only in slave trade. A lot of we Nigerians enslaved the people of Nigeria, and then they exchanged it for what they deem right as an exchange rate for these people, for these Nigerians. It was not the colonial masters that started gathering Nigerians and put them in slavery. It was we Nigerians that enslaved ourselves, and then the colonial masters, and then we put these Nigerians up for sale, and then colonial masters shows their interest. The team proposition also came here and they said that these colonial masters exploited us, but this is very wrong. As our petroleum finished, I will ask you this question. Though their exploitation, the debate today says the lasting impact of colonialism. colonialism lasting impact of exploitation is not even showing currently in Nigeria. For example, you said they exploited like our country, for example, they exploited our petroleum. Actually, I agree to that. But them exploiting our petroleum doesn't mean that petroleum in Nigeria has ended today. Doesn't mean that we no longer have natural resources again. This is very wrong. Exploitation does not mean that exploitation of colonial governance does not mean that has a lasting that it has a lasting negative impact on today's governance. You said that colonial benefit of education, according to Nelson Mandela, the first president of South Africa, he said that education is the most powerful weapon we can use to change the world. And you said South Africa has one of the best GDP and infrastructure, and they use the educational mentality that they gained from these colonial masters. You said how was education? You throw this question to us that how was education benefited the infrastructure growth of countries in Africa. But South Africa, that even spent one of the longest time with these colonial masters, had good infrastructure, and their GDP is very high. You said if they use our own language to teach students, they tend to understand better. But the statistical report shows us that during the colonial period, when these colonial masters built schools for us, statistics show us that they actually agreed to the fact that they should still be teaching the cultural or native language of that particular place. For example, in Ekiti State, they are teaching Yoruba in the curriculum. Yoruba is in the curriculum of each subject. Yoruba is in the curriculum of each education, of each schools, and this shows us that they are still using our language. The impact of colonial masters in education does not mean that these are neglected our culture. I teach Yoruba and I learn Yoruba in my school. This could be traced to colonial masters bringing education and even impacting me on how I can build on my cultural aspect. These people also came. They said that colonialism has led into a lot of bad things that is affecting our nation. But this is very wrong, as I do not believe this fact. Good evening. This will lead me to going into my point. Good evening, everyone seated here today. My name is Kolade Ibidayo from the opposing team of the motion that states colonialism has had a lasting negative impact on developing countries, in which I do not agree to, and I strongly believe that colonialism has had a lasting positive impact on developing countries. The impact of colonialism has brought us Western education, which has enabled us to take our rightful community of nations. Chief Obafemi Awolowo once said, the impact of colonialism should not be underestimated due to the fact that it has brought us technology, it has brought us global connectivity, it has brought us cultural exchange. It has even brought us economic growth. Then this could be attestable to colonial masters and colonialism. Colonialism, despite its controversies, had led and had made a positive impact and has made a positive impact in today's governance and in today's society. This is why I say colonialism has actually impacted us positively and not negatively. First and foremost, colonialism stimulated economic growth. According to statistical report that shows us by Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, it shows us that Nigeria's GDP grew even during the time of even in the colonial era. Nigeria's GDP was 1.3 billion in 1900, but in 1960, where colonialism ended, it was 4.6 billion dollars. And this is why I say the GDP of Nigeria grew during colonial era. Currently, the GDP of Nigeria could be attested to the infrastructural benefits that we see from colonial masters. Colonialism built us modern industries, infrastructure, and financial system, which are even still benefiting of today. Colonialism, the GDP of Nigeria currently stands in $240 billion, and this could be attested to colonialism. This is why I say colonialism has made a positive impact in the development of countries today. Colonialism has even increased the global trade. Colonialism has enhanced global trade. Before, Nigeria had petroleum, but they don't know how they can trade with other countries and then gain their money financially. I will tell you later. Colonialism has even enhanced global trade by making Nigerians to be able to trade with their natural resources and then gaining their money. This is why I say colonialism has even made the world a better place. Colonialism, even in colonial era, we had 500% increase in infrastructure development. We have 500% increase in global trade in Nigeria. This could not be compared. This is immeasurable and incomparable with that of the pre-colonial era. Colonialism has ensured that we can trade globally, and this would add to the financial GDP and to the growth of the GDP of Nigeria and all other African countries. This is that colonialism has actually impacted positively these developing countries. Colonialism has even ensured cultural exchange. If not for colonialism, this debate may not be able to stand today. I know why it's a question that is in most of our minds. The reason is that my Anambra opponent here will be speaking Igbo, and I will be speaking Ekiti and I will be speaking Yoruba from Ekiti State. This does not make us to be able to communicate together. But colonialism has brought the lingua franca for Nigeria, which has enabled us to be able to communicate together, which has enhanced communication by people of different tribes. Colonialism has ensured that cultural exchange is very essential for development of countries, and colonialism has brought us this. This shows us that colonialism has actually made world a better place and not the vice versa. Colonialism has brought modern farming technologies, which has even impacted our countries today. In conclusion, colonialism has impacted cultural exchange, has introduced technologies and farming initiatives, has actually increased the global growth, the global trade, and has actually increased the economic growth of Nigeria. How can we now say colonialism has not made? How can we say colonialism has had a negative impact on developing countries? This is very wrong, and I strongly believe, and me and my co-debaters are of the opinion that colonialism has actually had a positive impact on developing countries, and we strongly believe that we have convinced the panel of judges and everyone seated here today that colonialism has had a positive impact. Thank you. I remain Kola David Ayo, and I'm proud to oppose this motion.
That was an excellent performance. It is my delight to call on the lead speaker of side opposition to give a reply speech.
Good evening once again, panel of judges, and everyone seated here. I remain Oderinu Pisbolo Atife, the reply speaker from Chief Opposition, and we are here to reaffirm our stand in the motion, which states that colonialism has had a lasting negative impact on developing countries. C.C. Lewis once said, and I quote, "You cannot go back and change the beginning, but you can start from now and change the end." We from the opposition team, we strongly oppose this motion that colonialism has had a lasting negative impact on developing countries. The people from my worthy opponents from the proposition team, you mentioned that colonialism brought about forceful modern governments, but these same colonial masters, they introduced Nigerian police force in 1861 to modernize law enforcement. Also, a statistic report shows that over $240 billion from GDP and other countries, they envy Nigeria due to this GDP, and what attributed to this GDP because of colonial era governance. You also mentioned that they forced their laws on us. That is totally unacceptable, and I disagree. They brought about unification of the various traditional systems that we have. Before in Nigeria, we were using various traditional governance roles, and they are barbaric, uncivilized, and uncultured. Before the introduction of modern governance by colonialism, jungle justice was the order of the day. But with the use of colonial governance, the rule of law was introduced, and various governance things were introduced. The proposition team also mentioned slave trade. This same slave trade was abolished by British John Wilberforce. So that your point is trashed. You also made mention of struggling with the curriculum and living in urban areas. We need a statistical report to surely back that up, and to strongly tell us from the opposition team to agree with you. We from the opposition team, we came to this podium with boldness and confidence, and we brought to you the following points. Education. Education is the antidote to ignorance. Through colonialism, education was introduced into Nigeria. We also made measures of infrastructural development. The path to progress must be well lit. Infrastructural development was introduced by colonial masters. You made mention that these infrastructural developments were used by the colonial masters to transfer their goods. That is also part of exploitation, but that is not a lasting negative impact because they are not exploiting Nigeria now because we have gained our independence. We also made mention of abolishment of harmful traditional practices. We made mention of tribal wars, tribal war cannibalism, female genital mutilation. We also made mention of economic growth. Colonialism helped to increase the global GDP, and with this impartial panel of judges, accurate timekeeper, ladies and gentlemen, we from the opposition team still strongly oppose this motion which states that colonialism has had a lasting negative impact on developing countries, but rather a positive impact. And with this, the motion must fall. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the reply speaker for side opposition. Permit me to invite the lead speaker of side proposition to give her reply speech.
The House. During the course of argument of team opposition, they actually made a statement to which one of their lines read, "Rising when we fall." Panel, to this we concede to because we have seen cases of these developing countries not even rising, that even falling more into shambles because they have seen these developing countries not even rising from economic fluctuations, economic crisis, despite the availability of these colonial masters who prioritize exploitation over local development of these nations. Panel, team opposition, during the course of argument of second supporting speaker of team opposition, he actually was giving arguments. The House, whatever arguments side opposition gave during the second supporting speaker's course of argument is actually coming late because he's not supposed to do so. The House, they also tried to tackle our argument on exploitation, and they say that that exploitation is no more taking place in our country. By panel, through neocolonialism, which gives these colonial nations the power to exploit us more and more through the availability of their corporations, such as Royal Dutch corporations that still exist today, gives them the ability or the advantage to still tap our resources, exploit them, take it to their country, find it and bring it to us to buy at exorbitant prices. Panel, this is inhumane. The House, team opposition has succeeded in tackling 4 core arguments of side opposition in today's debate. First of all, they brought the argument of eradication and harmful practices, to which I myself countered by giving us an example of how eradication of bad cultures like killing of women in United Kingdom was evident. Panel, they also brought the argument of infrastructure development, to which my first supporting speaker actually gave a counter argument saying that these infrastructures were not even built for our own benefits. They were built to transport the exploited resources from certain locations to where they will take it to their country. For example, the railway station that was built from Enugu to Port Harcourt was actually built to transport coal from Enugu to Port Harcourt and not from where they will ship it to their country. Panel, they also brought the argument of Western education, to which my lead speaker, I myself, and my second supporting speaker has tackled effectively, of which team opposition persistently brings up in today's debate during the course of argument. We give counter argument on it by giving a comparative analysis about the developed countries that use the language to teach and the developing countries that are imposed with foreign languages that makes it even hard for them to record progress. We also gave you an analysis under this same argument on how this Western education is not even helping us to solve our economic crisis, economic issues, and economic fluctuations, because they give us measures that are not even working for us or solving our needs. Panel, they also brought the issue of good governance of colonialism, to which my second supporting speaker effectively tackled by talking about how these colonial rules were characterized by oppression, how they were characterized by oppression, how they're characterized by repression, and even corrupt and bad rulers. Panel, in a society where we have bad rulers, how do you expect the society to grow? It's not even possible. But panel, this is how we have been able to mess up the arguments in today's debate, which means they don't even have any single argument lasting in today's argument. Panel, what have we brought to you in today's debate? We have been able to bring to you a world where economic impact has shown the lasting negative impact of colonialism in today's debate, under which we discuss exploitation, debt debt trap strategies, and even economic dependency. We brought to you a world where social impact plays on today's debate. When my first speaker spoke about slave trade that carried away thousands, that carried away millions of individuals from Africa, which led to an undeveloped nations or developing countries across the world. But I also brought to you psychological impacts, which is a lasting negative impact of colonialism in today's debate, under which we discuss inferiority complex and traumatization that comes with the feeling of suppression, anxiety, and fear. We also brought you a world of political impact, where we discuss conflicts as a result of arbitrary borders issues that was actually created by colonial rules. We also discussed neocolonialism under this, and we also was able to give you evidence and justifications to this. At this juncture, team proposition says we are proud to propose, and let the motion stand. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Colonialism or no colonialism, would let the judge decide on that.
Hello, fears. This is a keenly contested debate where both teams did extremely well in terms of fluency, technicality, presentation of points, and teamwork. Nevertheless, a team must emerge as a winner. But before I decide on that one, let me point out some things. With my judges here, stated that both of them exhibited teamwork, and the lead speakers too did very well. But it's a battle of titans. And we have a split judgment here. Two judges gave it to Team Ekiti, while one judge gave it to Team Anambra. On this note, Team Ekiti won this session of quarterfinal. Thank you.